Hi, my name's Libby. I'm a psychological wellbeing practitioner, and today I really want to focus on something called behavioural activation. So in my last video I spoke about 5 ways to wellbeing, and I spoke about Face COVID by Russ Harris, and all of these things are trying to stay in tune with your wellbeing, stay on top of it during isolation. And behavioural activation is an intervention that, in line with low intensity cognitive behavioural therapy, is really focusing in on making sure that you're engaged in activities, that you are making sure that you have a good balance in your week with your activities, and also making sure that you can increase that level of motivation and feel less de-energized, which I'm sure for a lot of people has maybe become a difficulty at the moment, because a lot of us have lost routine. So the first step in behavioural activation is thinking about identifying your activities. So what you really want to consider is monitoring this. People do this differently. There's lots of different apps that you can use, so you can be creative, but generally what I would advise is having an activity diary for the week, monitoring this for about a week to 2 weeks, and then reflecting on this. Now if you're lucky enough to have a practitioner to help you with this and guide you with it, then fantastic. If not, then there's certainly things that you can reflect on yourself. So that takes us on to the next step. Once you've monitored your activity using an activity diary for a couple of weeks, what you want to think about then is identifying the types of activities that you're doing or not doing. So we put these into 3 categories. We have routine, we have pleasurable, and we have necessary activities. So lots of activities come under each heading. So for example, a necessary activity in general might be getting an MOT, going to a GP appointment, yearly dental appointments, or paying bills. Those would be necessary things for me to engage in, so they come under the necessary category. Routine could be things like getting up, getting dressed at the same time, being able to attend to self-care, things like washing, dressing, going for a weekly shop, etc. So that might be my routine, but some of those can also slip into necessary. The next category then would be pleasurable. So these are things that we like doing, as opposed to dislike. So those could be things like going to the gym, reading a nice book, watching some TV, whatever that kind of comes under for you. And activity is anything. So if you're not doing something, then you're doing something. So monitoring any of these is really important. And then once you've gotten into the rhythm of identifying what activities you are doing, you can maybe identify ones you want to be doing as well. So it's really good to have a list of activities and putting them into those categories. So routine, pleasurable, and necessary. Once you've got that list formed, that might be doing more of what you're already doing and maybe adding in some extra bits. So once you've identified that, the next step is to think about how you can plan those things in. So to effectively do this, we want to be realistic. So we want to firstly think about putting it into a hierarchy. So thinking about identifying what activities are the least difficult, what ones are medium difficult, and what ones are the highest difficulty or the hardest to do. If you're someone who has been very de-energized, very demotivated, and are feeling very low in mood at the moment, then make sure that you put this into the most manageable chunks. Also, if you're someone who's experiencing a lot of stress at the moment, think about breaking an activity down into small and manageable activities. So for example, if I know it's absolutely necessary for me to pay my bills, but I'm really overwhelmed by this, what can I do first? I'm going to schedule in time where I look at my letter or my invoice for my bills. Okay, next day I'm going to schedule 5 minutes where I can sit down and get everything ready that I need to get ready. What are the steps that I need to take? And I have time to think about that. And then the day after, I might be making the step to pay my bill. So that's an example of breaking things down. If you're wanting to do a pleasurable activity like going for a run, but that feels too much, can you break it down? Can you go for a long walk first? Can you make sure that you're doing all of your basic needs first? Because that's important before we jump into something bigger. So just considering all those little things. And if you've noticed that you've become very deactivated in recent times, then really, really consider what is the first step for you, what comes in that easiest category, and that's where we're making a start. And once we've identified then that hierarchy of least difficult to most difficult activities, we want to start putting in some scheduling. So we want to have a look at our week and think, where is a really plausible time for me to schedule in an activity? And be really specific with your planning in your diary, as you can be in your reflecting as well. So think about what you're doing, where you're going to do it, who you're going to do it with, for how long. So the duration of the activity is also really important because we can build on that. Also thinking about maybe tracking your mood as well. And that's a really good thing, because then we can look back at the days and think about, well, I was feeling sort of about 50% anxiety, 80% low mood, and then the week after, once I engaged in this activity, I was actually feeling 70% low mood and 40% anxiety. And then you can have a look at it and really reflect on what's working, what isn't, and it's a really good thing, and it gives a good sense of achievement. And so thinking about the acronym ACE, so a sense of achievement, a sense of connection, a sense of enjoyment in our activities, all these things are really important. And so we want to be able to also reflect on not only how it's making us feel overall, but are we doing things in line with those values? Are we doing things we enjoy, that we feel connected to, or with people? Are we doing things that give us a sense of achievement? And a lot of the time, if we've been very deactivated, doing these things can give us a sense of achievement in themselves. We've made a start on feeling better and feeling more energized and feeling more well. So that's an achievement. So we've gone through their simple steps of behavioural activation. So thinking what is going on for you at the moment, recording your activities, what you're doing, what you're not doing, thinking about identifying the types of activities, routine, pleasurable, necessary ones, thinking about organising those activities into least, medium and most difficult, and then starting with the least difficult, thinking about planning those into your day-to-day. Probably advisable to start with 1 to 2 activities, planning throughout your week, and adapt to this. Very important as well that if you don't do an activity, make sure to reschedule it, as that can come under your sense of achievement, and stop that cycle from kind of flipping back on itself, and having some unhelpful thoughts, and slipping back into not doing things. So some key things to think about is, don't expect to feel better right away, don't do too much too soon, be very graded with what you're doing, and make sure to check in with yourself on that, and monitoring your mood is a really helpful way to do that. And remembering that you're in control of the speed that you do these activities in. So you're not under pressure to do anything too quickly or anything that you don't want to do. So take the time to reflect on what's really helpful for you. I hope this helps. That's behavioural activation. Let me know how you get on.